What are the mysteries? It is said that you can reveal all, but give away nothing. Secrets alone are empty, but knowledge and wisdom bring enlightenment and power. Witches follow a path which to outsiders may appear mysterious, working with symbolism, with carefully constructed patterns of ritual which draw upon the archetypal mythologies of human experience and the unconscious mind. They seek not to create mysteries, but to penetrate them and attain understanding of the eternal realities such myths and symbols conceal.
In the Book of Shadows, it talks of the three great mysteries in the life of man, and magic controls them all. The first mystery is the hardest, and that is birth. Being born is, according to medical science, almost more painful and more traumatic than your actual death. Death is passing, transitory. Birth is for life. After that first initiation, there is the growth process. When you consider how much knowledge a newborn takes in the first years of its life, and then learning slowly, gaining more wisdom, it matures to an adult. And then the second initiation takes place, the second great mystery. And that is the mystery of love. Love in the sexual sense, love in the emotional sense, of discovering the awakening within your body, knowing that one act between one man and one woman can produce life yet again. The quickening in your heart, the racing in your soul, the first flash of romance. And then the rose-coloured glasses come off and you learn to develop that love and give it greater depth. And this is the second initiation. And the third is death itself. All of us wish to die peacefully in our sleep, but all of us will die. It is the law of the goddess, the return and return. Return, return again as long as the red earth rolls. They never wasted a leaf on a tree. Do you think they would squander souls? Death is the great mystery of the door that opens into the unknowable. None of us can really say what it's like unless we remember incarnations, and even then, the glimpses we have are only transitory. But death itself, nobody knows. Is death a beginning? Witches think so. In Gardnerian and Alexandrian ritual, part of the second degree initiation is the legend of the descent of the goddess into the underworld. In our own coven, we use this specifically when a witch has attained the right to understand and teach and to become an elder. It is a memory of the legend of Demeter and Persephone. Persephone, child of Demeter, great Mother Earth, wanders away one day to pick flowers from her mother. And then she falls prey to Hades, lord of the underworld, who riding on his chariot sees her and falls passionately in love with the maiden and drags her down into his dark world, the world of death. There she must wait and hope to be released because she does not love him. But he loves her passionately and with all his heart, and he feeds her the pomegranate. And biting from the pomegranate, Hades has her. Now she must stay there forever. If you read the legend, spring cannot be twisted and turned and held prisoner, but must break forth again and be free. In the winter, when the autumn leaves fall and Persephone goes down to the underworld, we reenact this legend, for during the 6 months of the year, which the original legend states she must spend with Hades, Demeter roams the earth, calling Kore, Kore, and the birds of the air mock her, repeating the calls, Kore, Kore, which is Persephone's other name. Poor Demeter, lost, alone, demented out of her mind with grief, eventually does win Kore back. The 6 months underground have gone, and springtime breaks forth yet again. In the dark mists, Kore has gone and vanished. And with the first misty spring days, she rises with the crocus and the snowdrop.
In ancient time, our Lord, the Horned One, was, as he still is, the consoler, the comforter. But men knew him as the dread Lord of Shadows, lonely, stern, and just. Now Our Lady, the goddess, had never loved, but she would solve all the mysteries, even the mystery of death. So she journeyed to the underworld. The guardian of the portals challenged her. Strip off thy garments, lay aside thy jewels, for naught mayest thou bring with thee into this our land. So she laid down her garments and her jewels, and was bound, as are all who enter the realms of death, the mighty one. Such was her beauty that Death himself knelt and kissed her feet, saying, Blessed be thy feet that have brought thee in these ways. Abide with me, but let me place my cold hand on thy heart. She replied, I love thee not. Why dost thou cause all things that I love and take delight in to fade and die? Death replied, Lady, 'tis age and fate against which I am helpless. Age causeth all things to wither. But when men die at the end of time, I give them rest and peace and strength so that they may return. But thou art lovely, return not, abide with me. But she answered, I love thee not. Then said Death, and now receive not my hand upon thy heart, thou must kneel to death's scourge. It is fate, better so, she said. And she knelt, and Death scourged her tenderly, and she cried, I feel the pangs of love. And Death raised her and said, Blessed be. And he gave her the fivefold kiss, saying, Thus only mayest thou attain to joy and knowledge. And he taught her all his mysteries, and they loved and were one. And she taught him the mystery of the sacred cup, which is the cauldron of rebirth. And he gave her the necklace, which is the circle of rebirth, and taught her all the magics. For there are 3 great events in the life of man, love, death, and resurrection in the new body, and magic controls them all. For to fulfill love, you must return again at the same time and place as the loved one. Then you must meet and know and remember. But to be reborn, you must die and be made ready for a new body. And to die, you must be born. And without love, you may not be born. And this is all the magics.
How easy is it to become a witch? It's not easy at all. Witchcraft is hard work. It is a vocation. It is not a game. It is not something to pick up and put down. Many people join groups. They actually become initiated into witchcraft, and they discover it is such hard work, they leave. It takes many, many hours of blood, sweat, and tears to become a priest or priestess of the craft. It is a priesthood, and like any other priesthood, the training can be very, very intense, both emotionally, physically, and psychologically. Emotionally, in the sense that you first of all face your own nightmares. You face inside yourself aspects of your own personality that you do not want to acknowledge. Once you have faced them, it's a growth process. You come out the other side a better human being. We have been educated in such a way that fear and superstition and ignorance have been part of our lives. Once you become a witch, you have to unlearn fear, superstition, and ignorance. There are so many subjects that the witch has to study. And I'm not just talking about tarot cards, crystal balls, all the paraphernalia that is supposed to go with witchcraft. A witch needs knowledge of science, physics, mathematics, language, which doesn't mean to say you have to be fluent in any given language, almost everything, history, archaeology, a certain degree of medical science. It's vast. The whole study program is endless. And, of course, you are expected to study other world religions, not to destroy them with your knowledge, but to learn from them and to be able to contribute to an understanding of other religions apart from your own, other people's philosophy. When you start practicing as a witch, you start by dedicating yourself. Not all covens do this. In the ancient, by ancient I mean going back to the 1950s, in the old covens, there was a degree system. Your first degree made you a witch. You could get that almost within the first 6 months, or a year and a day. Your second degree made you a priest or priestess, and during that time you stayed with your parent coven, but you were allowed to help run the rituals. Your third degree meant that you were now ready to start your own group. You left your own parent coven, you hived off and became leaders in your own right. We've done away with that. The same as in our coven, we don't call ourselves any tradition, we just call ourselves witches. We believe that the progression of witchcraft has altered the general way of looking at it. Tradition to us does not matter. There have been too many arguments and bickerings inside movements, inside paganism, over traditions. It must be done this way. The law within our coven is no, be yourself. Just call yourself a witch. In fact, you don't even have to call yourself a witch. You can call yourself whatever you like. But you will work. And after the first year and a day, you become dedicated. After your dedication, at some stage, possibly another year and a day, you become initiated. That initiation, in our way, makes you then a priest or a priestess in your own right. In other words, you've put in a lot of learning. You are achieving in your own right. We watch for achievement. We watch to see how a person develops and how they use their knowledge to better their lives and the lives of the people around them. We like to see people set goals for themselves. That's very important in a learning process. Once they are initiated and they have become a fully fledged witch, it could take anything up to 5 years before they achieve eldership. So we see it as dedication, initiation, and then finally eldership. When they are elders, they can either stay and work with us or form a group in their own right, or, as in the case of many of our own personal friends inside witchcraft, they are solitary workers. They take training, but they work on their own, not inside a coven structure. And they only get together with us for the great festivals of the year, the festivals that celebrate the cycle and tides of nature, the 8 great festivals, which start in the spring and go right the way through until Yule, which of course is Christmas to most people. The 8 seasonal festivals start off with Candlemas, which in Gaelic is Lola Breed, the festival of the goddess Breed. It is the quickening of life on planet Earth. It is the time when the priestesses light candles and call Breed to come to them, to come and be part of them and to awaken inside themselves new life. Not necessarily in the sense of a pregnancy, but new concepts, new ideas inside their mind, new inspirations, because Breed was an ancient goddess of inspiration. And then we go from Candlemas right the way through. We have the festival at Easter, Ostara. We have Beltane in English, a great fire festival when the sun is rising high in the heavens. May Day, the crowning of the Queen and the King of the May. Midsummer, lighting the great fires on the hillside because the sun is at the zenith and the earth is warm. and she is ripe and fertile and about to give us a great harvest. And then Lunasa. Lunasa, when the harvest is reaped and the Great Mother has given you all of her bounty. The equivalent of a harvest festival at the autumn equinox, thanking the gods for the food that they have given us. Samhain, Halloween, the time when we talk to our beloved ones who have passed over. The great festival of laughter and at the same time solemnity, because it is a festival of the dying of the year. The old Celtic New Year, when everything is buckled down for the harsh winter, all the animals are brought down and put into the sheds so the cold winds and the snow will not harm them. And we all get together and we celebrate life in the depth of the cold darkness of the year, for the Great Mother sleeps and the Lord of Winter reigns supreme. And then Yule, the Great Mother begins to awaken. She awaits the sun who fertilizes her and gives her back her life, puts new life in the belly of Mother Earth. And there we light the candles on the tree, and just like people across the world, witches with their sense of wonder look into the night sky, because you never know who is riding on the clouds on a Christmas Eve.
To understand where Wicca fits within the pagan movement, it's important to understand that it's actually a priesthood. It's pretty safe to say that all Wiccans are pagans, but not all pagans are Wiccans. It's important to look at the history of Wicca and where it's come from. When you look at the history, it becomes obvious that the last thing to survive in a period of persecution is a priesthood. Originally, Wicca was the craft of the priest within a tribal culture. It has a lot of similarities with the shamanistic priesthoods which appear today in tribal cultures around the world. In the past in Europe, the culture was tribal, small villages spread across wide areas. Every village had its craftsman, had its butcher, its baker, its blacksmith. And the priesthood within that village were again a craft. You had a couple who would act as the spiritual focus for the village. They would perform the seasonal rites, they would do healing, and people would come to them for potions, lotions, and for small forms of magic related to their everyday life. They also acted as counsellors, not only to the common people within the tribe, but also to the heads of the village. Therefore, they were held in esteem.
Most covens, alongside the role of the high priest and high priestess, have two people who are second in command. These are two people who are willing, if the high priestess, for example, is not there, or the high priest is not there, they are willing to do the necessary work to keep the unit going. First and foremost is the coven maiden. She is the deputy to the high priestess. She is the one person who has studied for so many years that her knowledge is very equal to the priestess running the coven. The coven summoner, or fetch, some groups prefer the word summoner, actually I do. The coven fetcher or summoner is the high priest and high priestess's messenger. It is his job to go between covens carrying messages for the rulers of his parent coven. It is his job to settle arguments and disputes within the brotherhood should they arise. Always, any problems are taken first and foremost to the summoner or coven fetch, who in council with the coven maiden will try to make sure that the problem is contained. It doesn't get blown out of proportion. And only if he and the coven maiden cannot sort the problem out is it then passed on to the high priest and high priestess in council.
Witches have long remained silent over their ritual practices, as for so long they have faced misunderstanding and persecution for their beliefs. It is only in recent years that they have felt able to reveal in detail what goes on within the magic circle.
The persecution of witches has gone on for a long time. It still goes on today. But nothing like it was for 400 years of the history of Europe. Germany was one of the worst offenders. Many people say it was up to 9 million men, women and children who were either hung, burnt at the stake or decapitated for the act of witchcraft. The truth is it was several 100,000, but nobody will ever know exactly how many of these innocent people suffered. During 1486, this disgusting book, the Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of the Witches, was produced by 2 monks. These Dominicans were so sexually frustrated they saw witchcraft everywhere they looked, and they devised a method of torture that is so horrendous it does not bear thinking about. And they put these innocent people through unbelievable pain until in the end they confessed to the crime of witchcraft. East Anglia in England is one of the places where Matthew Hopkins, the infamous Witchfinder General, operated. Here, in this misty, remote country area, the villagers were terrified by Hopkins and his ilk. And mercilessly, he rode through village after village, getting little children in exchange for a farthing to betray their parents. Local villagers turning on other villagers. Even the vicar of Branston, who was an old man barely able to mumble his way through a service, was proclaimed a witch. He was taken to Bury St Edmunds after hours of torture, and finally he confessed because of the pain he was in, and there he was hung. He had to say his own funeral mass over himself because nobody else would do it for him. Many of these people were not witches at all, they were good Christians. It was an age of fear. Today, the persecution of witches is much more likely to be the local authorities investigating your children in case you are sexually abusing them, little realizing that witch children are amongst the most well-loved, nurtured and looked after anywhere on earth. We have seen terrible incidents of that in the British Isles, in the Orkney Islands. Again, the victims were not witches, but innocent people accused of, again the word, crime of witchcraft. Thinly disguised with a veneer of child molestation, child neglect, etc. So witches today are well aware of the fact that we are on our guard and we do not forget the sins of the past. The church in Rome at the moment is talking of apologizing for the crimes against the innocent over generations. And all we can hope is that they apologize, amongst other things, for the crime committed against the innocents accused of witchcraft. Many witches at the old Celtic festival of Samhain hold a dumb mass in honor of the dead who died as a result of the persecution, the burning times. It is a feast that is laid out silently and eaten in complete silence, remembering as we eat that we are offering of ourselves a time of reflection for those that went through the horrors and the nightmare of 400 years of terror.
To understand the Book of Shadows, it's really important to understand its origins. In the late 30s, a gentleman called Gerald Gardner, a customs official who had worked in Malaya, moved back to the south coast of England. To be precise, he moved to the New Forest, a place called Christchurch. After moving to the New Forest, he became involved with the first Rosicrucian theatre based in Christchurch. He quickly became aware that there was a group of people there who were practicing some form of magic, and very quickly tried to become involved. What he found probably was a mixture of Rosicrucian ideas and ritual magic, but he used the generalised term witchcraft to define it. Whether they actually were witches is another matter, and there is some debate as to whether the reason he finally left the group was because he was asked to leave because he kept using the terrible W word to describe them. Anyway, while there, he was passed information about their practices, particularly from a woman known as Old Dorothy, who we now know is a woman called Dorothy Clutterbuck, later known as Fordham. It was she who passed down a list of verbal information to him, which became known as the Gardnerian Laws. There were approximately 51 of those. It was these he incorporated into his first book, called The Book of the Art Magical. Now, if you've ever seen this book, the most obvious thing about it is that it is not what you would call a Book of Shadows. Most of the material has definitely been scavenged from ritual magic. In that form, the Book of Shadows stayed well until the early 50s, probably, but most people say 1953, where there's a definite change in that book. It was about this time Doreen Valiente became involved with Gerald Gardner and started to put much of the prose and build the Book of Shadows into what we know it is today.
The history of the Book of Shadows holds other secrets.
Strangely enough, the term Book of Shadows did not actually originate in Western Europe. It is in fact a Middle Eastern term. The Book of Shadows was a system of divination, and within Wicca, the system of the measure used at initiation was also actually part of the Book of Shadows. The measure was taken around the head, around the chest, and the length of the body, and this was then used as a system of divination. It's obvious Gerald Gardner read this somewhere and thought, what a lovely idea, I'll incorporate it. So not all of the Book of Shadows is actually Western. Into the Witch's Book of Shadows, we've actually incorporated aspects from the Middle East and changed them and evolved them.
Inside witchcraft, it was the tradition, created again by Gerald Gardner, that one should have a Book of Shadows. You're supposed to copy out your Book of Shadows by hand. And unfortunately, the Book of Shadows really is outdated and outmoded. Your Book of Shadows should really be your own personal magical diary. For example, does a witch work magic? What is magic? Do witches work spells? What are spells? A spell is very similar to a prayer. I don't use them very often. I don't feel the need to. It's this relationship, this one-on-one between me and my God, my goddess. If I want something hard enough and specifically enough, I will simply light a candle and I will say, Lady, here is a problem and this is the solution I would like to the problem. Can we work this out between us? I may not get exactly what I ask for, but I invariably get something close to it.
The Book of Shadows, as used by Janet, Stuart and Gavin, is very much more open and flexible than traditional religious texts.
One of the things we'll want you to do now is to copy out the Book of Shadows. Now, this is not Holy Writ. Copy out the basic rituals, okay? But by all means, find material and add and write your own material. We expect your Book of Shadows to be completely different to ours.
Right, so
This is
personal.
This is personal. It's creative.
Right.
If it, if everybody was to pass down a Book of Shadows from person to person, that would be the same. Wicca wouldn't get anywhere. There'd be no growth. You add bits. You change. If something isn't relevant anymore, you change it. Simple as that. That's very important.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
So I'll leave you to get on. Copy it out. Take your time.
All right.
Okay? The formats used for a Book of Shadows can vary widely. We've seen them in everything from school notebooks, loose leaf binders, black accountancy books, and the commonest nowadays is actually a floppy disk of shadows. People now keep them on computer simply because it is easier.
Witches don't have their own 10 commandments. They have certain rules of behaviour and procedure. But there aren't 10 of them, particularly.
The term coven invokes many stereotyped ideas. The moment you use the word coven, most people envisage a tightly structured group of people working together. This was certainly true up until the 1980s within modern witchcraft. It's important to remember that our modern idea of a coven is just that, it is modern. Its structure has more in common with the ritual magic lodge than probably what traditionally was a coven. This is mainly due to the history of Wicca, where many elements have come out of ritual magic. A good example is the degree system in Wicca, which came about because of the interaction between Gerald Gardner and Aleister Crowley. Gerald Gardner met Crowley at the Pentagram Club in London. Gerald Gardner was desperate for some sort of structure for Wicca. He had some fragments from the New Forest, he had sourced material, but he wanted it to be a recognised tradition. It was at this point that he received the charter from Aleister Crowley, and yes, the charter does exist. Some people say that there was no interaction between Gardner and Crowley, but it's obvious if you've ever seen one of Gardner's original books, High Magic's Aid, it is clearly labelled inside with Gardner's magical name, Scryer, which was the name used when he was part of the OTO. Nobody's really sure how much involvement Gardner had with Crowley, but we know the charter exists, and we know the degree system probably originated out of the OTO rather than anything traditional. Most modern covens have looked at the degree system and changed it, a naturally evolving process. We ourselves have changed first degree to the term dedication, second degree to the term initiation, and third degree to the term eldership. They're more descriptive of what is really happening in the process of the initiation structure.
Inside the craft and outside the craft, a priest or priestess of witchcraft first and foremost must involve themselves with other people outside our religion. You serve the community, and that is very, very vitally important. If you take yourself from the community, you cannot be integrated with your fellow man. And it's an essential part of witchcraft to learn from everybody, all religions, colours and creeds. Your Book of Shadows, your magical diary, deals with how you work magic, because magic is real. It is an essential part of this religion, this philosophy. What makes a witch? A sense of wonder. What is magic? Magic is sitting beside me in a vase. Magic is the beauty of a flower. A witch sees a flower differently to many, many people. We don't just see it as a flower that grows in the garden or looks beautiful in a vase. We see it as, if you like, part of the great goddess's clothing. She clothes the planet with magic. Magic is the cry of a new life being born, a new baby, a small animal coming into this world. Magic is also death. Death is very important. It is a ritual that is used and understood in witchcraft. We too have a requiem. When a witch dies, or a friend of ours dies, we have our own form of passing over ceremony. As one doctor put it many years ago, it is far harder being born than it is to actually die. A magic is an understanding. This is why witches do not fear death. None of us want to die painfully. None of us want to be like those poor men and women during the Middle Ages, during the terrible persecution times, who died by hanging or by the sword or by burning. None of us want to go through that kind of an ordeal to die. We'd all like to die peacefully in our sleep. But the actual physical act of death, once we have passed that threshold, holds no fear for the witch. It is the great initiation. It is the initiation that reunites you back to your Lord and Lady to await rebirth. And the kind of people who are drawn to witchcraft are people who say, teach me the challenge of magic. And one of the first things we do is we say, magic is understanding how easy it is to want something and make it happen. And then I say to them, with the power of your mind, move that vase from here to here. And I sit back and I watch them concentrate. And they say, I can't do it. And I say, yes, you can. No, I can't. I'm concentrating, but the flower vase will not move. Yes, but I said, use the power of your mind. But I am using the power of my mind. No, you're not. You are convincing yourself that magic has to be something impossible to achieve. That's magic. I have used the power of my mind to move an object from point 1 to point 2, point A to B, by the simplest possible means. And that is what magic is about. Understanding that although the universe is complex, magic is the simple understanding of the force greater than ourselves that we can use and tap into, and by a sheer act of will, alter a situation to bring it to culmination, to fulfillment.
When you did your dedication, you passed from the element of earth to the element of water. So what I'm going to do now is go through some of the deeper mysteries of the element of water, particularly the magical tools. Now, I'd already taught you about the chalice being the element of water, but there's a lot more going on here. I mean, the obvious thing is the feminine symbolism. It's the womb, the vagina. And the same with the athame. I want to go through that with you, about it being the masculine. Obviously it's phallic. It's the element of fire. It's active. Now there's much more going on with the chalice than just the feminine symbolism. Obviously when you think of the chalice you're thinking of it representing woman, but it also represents the hidden buried side in the man, as what Jung called the anima, the contrasexual self.
Right.
The same with the athame. In the woman it represents the animus, the buried masculine aspect, which is why for a woman using it in ritual it's an important tool.
Right.
Now also with the chalice, this is interesting, it's a passive tool. If you pour fluid into the chalice moulds it.
Right.
It's from chaos becomes order. You pour a fluid which is chaotic, suddenly is ordered. So the chalice is representative of order. And very important, you have the circle. The circle is representative of order. Now you see the circle continually in mythology. If you look at Greek mythology, you have Orpheus, the world serpent, which goes around the edge of the world. But it's not just the world, it's the whole universe. You find the same in Norse myth. They use the Midgard serpent. It represents order, and everything inside, which is in chaos, is ordered by it. So the chalice can represent the universe. It can represent the order.
The order of the universe.
The order of the universe, the way the chaos of the universe is structured.
Right.
So the goddess can be seen as the structure the universe exists in. I've seen some beautiful pictures where you have a woman sitting down and the world is in her womb, and that's very descriptive of what the chalice represents.
Okay. Right.
Now, one of the most important rituals you come across, you've seen this done, we've done it ourselves, is the consecration of wine. When you do this, you have the passive ordering of the wine, and you have the euthymia going into the wine, and that's the active ordering, which is why, as a magical tool, this is important when you're trying to control chaotic forces. So the two go in. So when you put the euthymia in, it's actively controlling the contents, it's actively charging the contents. But the chalice is moulding them. Without the chalice, you would not be able to do this at all.
Absolutely, yeah. Right.
When drawing down the moon, it is appropriate, nay, it's essential, that you understand the nature of the deity that you are trying to pull through. If, for example, you want to work with a healing deity, green is the colour of healing. Too many people wear the same ritual robes, one circle after another. Adapt your ritual robes and your ritual regalia specifically for a given deity. If, for example, you wish to work one night with Isis, then decorate yourself with lapis lazuli. Wear scarabs around your neck. If you want to work with gentle Kuan Yin, jade. Soften your form with jade green, the gems of jade around you. Aphrodite, pearls, seashells, opals, moonstones. The Durga, rich red rubies or garnets. For Freya, rich amber. Always remember that your deity will respond to the colours and the fragrances and the jewels that belong to that particular aspect of the goddess. Or, if you are a man working alone and wish to contact that aspect of your own divine lady, then you too put on the gems that are appropriate to her and wear them with pride for her. And you will find that she answers to your soul and calls to you in return. And the polarity between the two of you brings forth that deity for you to appreciate and understand within yourself.
By combining colours, perfumes, sounds and symbolism, witches directly influence the unconscious and psychic levels of the mind. Ritual is a tool which shapes the unconscious. Ceremony is a key which opens the door to psychic awareness. By concentrating upon coloured reflections in a ritual chalice, Janet uses its hypnotic properties to induce trance when invoking the presence of deity.
The culmination of your training as a witch priest or priestess, when you attain eldership, which in some traditions is known as the third degree, is the great rite. And great is where the emphasis should lie. It is not a rite to be taken lightly. It was originally intended as an act of sexual union between priest and priestess. But over the years, this has dramatically altered. For established lovers, it is still a ritual sexual act, committed between them in private, not with the coven standing around observing this sacred rite. If it is done in token, it is a ritual act between priest and priestess, where the coven may attend and from their hearts put their own energy into the loving act between this couple. The great rite embodies the union of the masculine and the feminine. In ancient times, woman was the altar. Woman, the life carrier, the life bearer. She who conceives the great child and brings it forth into life. In the symbolic great rite, the priestess represents the goddess's living body in human condition. Therefore, the act is an act of sanctity. It is the blessing of the union of male and female. The lance and the grail united together. The athame, the male phallic symbol. The chalice, the womb of the woman, united as one. The act of placing the athame into a chalice of wine is to honor the lifeblood of Mother Earth. If this act is performed correctly between priest and priestess, the ripples of this great rite should spread across the universe. It should be an act of creation between both partners. If they are friends, they may be working on a project. They may be writers, they may be artists. They may want to fulfill something within their higher self, and it becomes an act of divine inspiration. It is indeed an act of love and of devotion to each other on a specific level, a friendship level, or if the act takes place in actuality, a symbolic sexual act, then also it is the love between man and woman, established lovers. The great rite is performed at the end of all the great Sabbaths. Again we are honoring the unity of Mother Earth and the horned god, male and female creation, the yin and the yang, divinity together, performing the first initial act of creation. And this is why it is used when an elder of the third degree is ready to start their new life and run a coven of their own. Because for them, the creation is the beginning of their new family, the coven that they must learn to nurture and care for as their own children.
Assist me to erect the ancient altar at which in days past all worshipped, the great altar of all things. For in old time, woman was the altar. Thus was the altar made and placed, and the sacred point was the point within the center of the circle. As we have of old been taught that the point within the center is the origin of all things, therefore should we adore it. Therefore whom we adore we also invoke, by the power of the lifted lance. O circle of stars, whereof our Father is but the younger brother, marvel beyond imagination, soul of infinite space, before whom time is bewildered, and the understanding dark. Not unto thee may we attain, unless thine image be love. Therefore by seed and root, by stem and bud, by leaf and flower and fruit, do we invoke thee, O Queen of space, O jewel of light, continuous one of the heavens. Let it be ever thus that men speak not of thee as one, but as none. And let them not speak of thee at all, since thou art continuous. For thou art the point within the circle which we adore, the fount of life without which we would not be. And in this way are erected the holy twin pillars, in beauty and in strength are they erected, to the wonder and glory of all men.
The moon is drawn down and the goddess invoked and worshipped in human form. The giving of the fivefold kiss, as the ancient legends describe. For these witches, this night's magic and worship is over.